Shalom. This is Reverend John Ferret, and we are in Lesson 68, Part 2, in the continuing series, The Gospel According to Moses, in the book of Exodus. And so we're in Chapter 28, and as I mentioned, this is Part 2. Part 1 also dealt with Exodus 28 and God's instruction to Moses about the garments of the high priest and the priests, the garments of Aaron and his sons, who were the first priest and priests, the first high priest and the priests in the tabernacle. Now, in Part 1, we dealt with more of the idea of how does chapter 28 or verses in chapter 28, how do they testify of Jesus? And we've seen some amazing correlations. And so I highly recommend that when you're considering listening to this lesson, which is part 2 of lesson 68, that you would also consider part 1. Now, in the commentary section below, that area that before you actually click on the play button to actually watch this video or the play button to listen to an audio podcast, there below the picture is going to be some extra comments and extra information. And in that area, you can take a look at it. In some cases, depending on if you're watching on YouTube or maybe another podcast provider, it may say, click here for more information or click here to open up the comment window. But anyway, in that comment window, I have provided a link for episode number 1, but I also provided links for many other resources that will expand your knowledge in this area of the high priest, his garments, and the priests as well. And so, for instance, I have a number of links to the Temple Institute in Jerusalem. And these guys have done such an amazing job in terms of the articles about this specific topic on the clothes of the high priest, the garments of the high priest, and also of the priests. So that, along with others, is available in the comment section to expand, again, your ideas or your knowledge specifically about the garments of the high priest. So again, we're in part 2. Part 1 and part 2 should be taken as a unit, and I hope you listen to both of them to complete your study on Exodus chapter 28. So let's begin. You ready? What we're going to do is we're going to go to Exodus chapter 28, and we are going to read the first 14 verses in the New American Standard Translation. So in the New American Standard Translation, starting in verse 1, then bring near to yourself Aaron, your brother, and his sons with him from among the sons of Israel to minister as priest to me. Aaron, Nadav, Abihu, Eleazar, and Ithamar, Aaron's sons. I'm actually trying to pronounce the names of Aaron, and his sons the way they might be pronounced in Hebrew. You shall make holy garments for Aaron your brother, for glory and for beauty. You shall speak to all the skillful persons whom I have endowed with the spirit of wisdom, that they make Aaron's garments to consecrate him, that he may minister as priest to me. These are the garments which they shall make: a breastpiece, and an ephod, and a robe, and a tunic of checkered work, a turban, and a sash. And they shall make holy garments for Aaron your brother and his sons, that he may minister as priests to me. They shall take the gold and the blue and the purple and the scarlet material and the fine linen. They shall also make the ephod of gold, of blue and purple and scarlet material and fine twisted linen, the work of a skillful workman. It shall have 2 shoulder pieces joined to its 2 ends, that it may be joined. The skillfully woven band which is on it shall be like its workmanship, of the same material, of gold, of blue and gold and purple, and scarlet material, and fine twisted linen. You shall take 2 onyx stones and engrave on them the names of the sons of Israel, 6 of the names on the one stone, and the names of the remaining 6 on the other stone according to their birth. And just as a comment, when you actually are studying some of the resources that I've provided in the links below in the comment section or other resources, you'll find that even Jewish resources will say they don't know how the names of the tribes of Israel were put on those stones. In other words, which 6 were on the left, which 6 were on the right, and how were they ordered? So again, this is something we don't know with regards to the onyx stones of the ephod. Continuing, as a jeweler engraves a signet, you shall engrave the 2 stones according to the names of the sons of Israel. You shall set them in filigree settings of gold. You shall put the 2 stones on the shoulder pieces of the ephod as stones of memorial for the sons of Israel. And Aaron shall bear their names before the Lord on his 2 shoulders for a memorial. You shall make filigree settings of gold and 2 chains of pure gold. You shall make them of twisted cordage work, and you shall put the corded chains on the filigree settings. What you're looking at right now is a picture of the high priest. We'll be using this a couple different times during this session. But if you go to verse 4 in Exodus 28, the Lord comes to Moses and basically gives the following pieces of the garments of the high priest in order. Number 3 was the breastpiece, not a breastplate. If you read it very carefully, this breastpiece is made out of linen. So it's a linen cloth that's been folded over to make a pocket. We'll get to that later. Item number 6 in this picture is the ephod. And it's almost like a cape. It's almost like an apron that goes around the high priest with 2 shoulder straps that are on the back. Number 8 is the blue robe. And we'll be talking about that blue robe. It's the one robe that has the bells on it. A pomegranate and a bell, a pomegranate and a bell. We'll get to that a little bit later in this video podcast. Number 4 is the tunic. That's the white tunic that's worn directly on the body. And just as a side, I wanted to mention that tunic in Hebrew is ketonet. That's the Hebrew word, and the Strong's number is 3801. And in the temple instructions, and that's at the Temple Institute, the Temple Institute says that when this ketonet, this tunic, was made for the high priest, it was woven in one piece, except for the sleeves themselves. Now, what's fascinating is when you go to John chapter 19, verse 23, the soldiers took Jesus's tunic. So you have that Greek word, which is keton. The Strong's number is 5509. That Greek word that you find in John 19:23 translates the Hebrew word ketonet. So Jesus was wearing a ketonet, and in John 19, you can read it for yourself, the soldiers did not want to basically separate it because it was woven in one piece. This is fascinating. Jesus was wearing a tunic just like the priests in the temple, or just like the high priest. And isn't Jesus our high priest? Next, though, is this. When you actually read about the story of Joseph, of the many-colored coat, you can go to Genesis, and that's going to be 37, verse 3. His father, Jacob, made a tunic for Joseph. would have many different colors. But the tunic in Hebrew is a ketonet. Was it woven in one piece? We don't know. But what's fascinating is this. We've covered this already in Genesis. There is an amazing correlation between Joseph of the many-colored coat and Jesus. I'll just give you a sample. Joseph was sent by his father to his brothers, and they rejected him and tried to kill him, and they put him in the ground. But Joseph rose out of the ground and was sent to the Gentile nation of Egypt. And Jesus was sent by his father to his brothers, to Israel, and they rejected him, and they tried to kill him, and they buried him, put him into the ground. But he rose from the dead and definitely went to the Gentile nations. Very interesting correlation. And so we shouldn't be surprised that this ketonet, this tunic, not only is part of the high priest, it's a part of Jesus, it's a part of Joseph. And Joseph is this paradigm, this model of the Messiah. So I recommend that if you have not studied this yet, go to the YouTube channel for Light of Menorah and look for playlists. Click on that word playlists and look for the playlist that says Joseph of the Many-Colored Coat, the Paradigm. And they will go into that amazing correlation of Joseph and Jesus. So let's go back to that picture. And so we did talk about that white tunic that the high priest wore right next to his body. And next, in verse 4 of chapter 28, it talks about the turban, which is labeled number 1 here, and the sash, which you really can't see. It's number 5, and it's a sash that could have been basically in the same design with the same colors as that of the ephod. Now, when we connect verse 2 in Exodus 28 to what we're looking at here at verse 4, we find that these garments are kadosh. Strong's number is 6944. And kadosh comes from the Hebrew word kadosh, which is basically meaning separate, distinct, especially set apart. And that makes sense. These garments are for the high priest and also garments for the priests. So they will wear these special garments when they are ministering to the Lord. There's a Bible verse in here that really shows that all of these garments, the 8 garments for the high priest and also the ones for the priest, are specifically related to their ministry to the Lord. Let's take a look at this in the New American Standard. We taking a look at verses 40 to 41. For Aaron's sons you shall make tunics. You shall also make sashes for them, and you shall make caps for them for glory and beauty. You shall put them on Aaron, your brother, and on his sons with him. And you shall anoint them and ordain them and consecrate them, that they may serve me as priests. So Aaron himself certainly is a priest, but he's also the high priest. And so I just want you to notice that indeed, for Aaron's sons, for the priests, and the high priest, they do wear similar clothes in the fact that they wear the tunic, the sash, and the cap. Those are common between the high priest and the priests. There's a picture that we can see where, well, let's say it's Aaron, or maybe even later on as time passes, and you can see the high priest over here on the right-hand side, and you can see the priest over there on the left-hand side. So quite definitely, the priest and the high priest are wearing the cap, they're wearing the sash, they're wearing the tunic. You can see the white tunic on the high priest, but the high priest has more special clothes because of his distinct position as being the high priest. Now, one of the garments that we want to focus in on is the ephod. And we've already read the verses in Exodus 28, verses 6 through 14. And taking a look at those verses, we'll start out by looking at them. They shall also make the ephod of gold, of blue and purple and scarlet material and fine twisted linen, the work of a skillful workman. It shall have 2 shoulder pieces joined to its 2 ends, that it may be joined. The skillful woven band which is on it shall be like its workmanship, of the same material, of gold, of blue, of purple, scarlet, and fine twisted linen, etc. Again, through the end of 14. So again, looking at a different picture, again, the high priest wearing all of his garments, and the garments separated there on the right-hand side, we can see that the ephod labeled number 6, both on the left and also on the right, is almost like an apron. Or some scholars think maybe it's like a cape, or like I said, it's an apron or a cape or just a wraparound. There is a debate. There's a debate whether it was covered in the back or not. Look, if you take a look at the picture there on the lower right, number 6, you just have the wraparound ephod and the 2 straps that are going to come from the back, over the back of the high priest to his shoulders. Or was there actually a back to the ephod? In other words, that it extended up to the shoulders. We don't know. So it went from the elbows so in other words, the waist, you would say, of the ephod went from the elbows down to his knees with the 2 straps from the back and the settings of the 2 onyx stones. And you can see those there that are labeled in green, one on the left and one on the right. And it's interesting is that we just have a lot of detail, but not enough detail to give us the exact idea of what the ephod was. Or, for instance, how the names of the 12 tribes of Israel were put on the onyx stones. Which tribes were on the left? Which tribes were on the right side? We don't know specifically how all that was done. It's still a mystery. So with regards to the ephod, I highly recommend those links to the Temple Institute and the 4 articles that I've linked you to that they provided. They are just amazing, and they provide us with that much more detail about the ephod. So let's continue on as we go into the verses in 28. And again, using the New American Standard Bible, what we're going to do is take a look at 28, starting in verse 15 through 29. You shall make a breastpiece of judgment. Notice it says breastpiece, not breastplate. Okay? A breastpiece of judgment, the work of a skillful workman. Like the work of the ephod, you shall make it of gold, of blue and purple and scarlet material, and fine twisted linen. That's why it's not a breastplate. This is a cloth, a linen cloth, obviously, that's very colorful. It shall be square and folded double. So you'll fold it once and fold it twice, a span in length and a span in width. You shall mount on it 4 rows of stones. The first row shall be a row of ruby, topaz, and emerald. The second row, a turquoise, a sapphire, and a diamond. And the third row, a jacinth, an agate, and an amethyst. And the fourth row, a beryl, and an onyx, and a jasper. And they shall be set in gold filigree. The stones shall be according to the names of the sons of Israel. 12, according to the names. They shall be like the engravings of a seal, each according to the name of the 12 tribes. You shall make on the breastpiece chains of twisted cordage work in pure gold. You shall make on the breastpiece 2 rings of gold, and shall put the 2 rings on the 2 ends of the breastpiece. You shall put the 2 cords of gold on the 2 rings at the ends of the breastpiece. You shall put the other 2 ends of the cords on the 2 filigree settings and put them on the shoulder pieces of the ephod. So basically, the breastpiece has two chains on it. We'll see that in just a minute. That connects to the shoulder pieces from the ephod. And that's going to be at the front of it. You shall make two rings of gold, and shall place them on the two ends of the breastpiece, on the edge of it, which is toward the inner side of the ephod. You shall make two rings of gold and put them on the bottom of the two shoulder pieces of the ephod, on the front of it, close to the place where it is joined above, or above the skillfully woven band of the ephod. They shall bind the breastpiece by its rings to the rings of the ephod with a blue cord, so that it will be on the skillfully woven band of the ephod, and that the breastpiece will not come loose from the ephod. Aaron shall carry the names of the sons of Israel in the breastpiece of judgment over his heart when he enters the holy place, for a memorial before the Lord continually. So we're looking at the breastpiece and how it's connected to the shoulder pieces of the ephod that you can see on the top of the breastpiece, and how it's connected with below as well. The name of the breastpiece in Hebrew is Koshen Mishpat, or the breastpiece of judgment, or the breastpiece of the decree, or the formal decree. Now, the major focus is obviously the 12 stones for the 12 tribes of Israel. Now, this is very interesting, and that is both Jewish sources and Christian sources will say that the names, the Hebrew names for the gems, those 12 gems, many of them are very ancient names, and the etymology of those words cannot be determined. So we don't know what they were, and we don't know what color they were. So it's very interesting that there is rabbinic teaching as to what the colors of these stones were, and therefore what the colors of the flags of each tribe were. And in actuality, that's just made up. It's fantasy, because we cannot figure out what those ancient names were. So realistically, it's rabbinic opinion in their own commentaries on the Torah that would say what the stones actually were, or what the colors of these gems were, the colors of the flags of each of the tribes, and even how they were arranged. So it's rabbinic ideas, it's rabbinic opinion, and their opinion is very interesting, but there's no resources to actually prove, to say what they believe is correct. So this is clear if you were to actually access the commentary, the JPS Torah commentary by Nahum Sarna, or the commentary, for instance, by Dr. John Careed. And again, some of you that have been listening to the Torah series know that I have talked about Dr. John Careed, and he is a famous Egyptologist, a great archaeologist, and a proven awesome theologian. Let's just take a look at his commentary. Matter of fact, here it is. Exodus by Dr. John Careed, his study commentary. So we want to take a look at his commentary and his thoughts in terms of the stones that were on the breastpiece. He says the identity of most of these stones is unknown, and also the color. However, 9 of the 12 gems are mentioned in Ezekiel as precious stones found in the Garden of Eden. So you can take a look at this in Ezekiel chapter 28, verse 13. This is just a very interesting connection. As Dr. Careed says, this is not coincidental. It may perhaps be to remind the reader of the pure and sinless situation in the Garden of Eden. The high priest now enters the holy place bearing the physical reminders of that condition. And one of his tasks is to be an instrument to deal with the sins of Israel. The names of the 12 tribes of Israel are to be inscribed on the gems one per stone. But the order is not known, and we don't know which tribe was first or which tribe was named last. This repeats the text of the engraving on the two stones of the ephod that we just read about on the onyx stones. In Hebrew, repetition is for emphasis. The covenant between God and Israel is accentuated by this double appearance of the names on the high priest's vestments. Now, this is also true for rabbinic sources. For instance, in the rabbinic commentary called the Chumash, the Five, when rabbis are making their commentary on these specific verses upon the gems, the color of the gems, and so on. But now we come to a key verse that is very, very intriguing. And that is, again, in the New American Standard, chapter 28, verse 30. You shall put in the breastpiece of judgment, the koshen mishpat, the breastpiece of judgment, or the breastpiece of a decree, or the breastpiece of decision, the Urim and the Thummim. Now, what's very fascinating here is the rabbis say, see, Urim, that means lights, and Thummim is the plural for completeness. Now, what's interesting is this is the guess of the rabbis, probably after Jesus's day. The word for light in Hebrew is or, not ur. And or specifically is a female or a feminine noun. So therefore, the plural for or is orot. Here we have ur, that's not lights. We don't know what ur means. And urim would be something that doesn't relate to the plural of lights, which is a feminine noun, and urim with the I-M sound, that is a masculine ending. Could it be? Well, it could. And thummim, the same idea. Is it related to the word completeness and the plural of completeness? Maybe. So even when you take a look at scholarly study of these two words, we don't really know the etymology of these two words or even what they were. So the Urim and the Thummim, they shall be over Aaron's heart when he goes in before the Lord, and Aaron shall carry the judgment of the sons of Israel over his heart before the Lord continually. So the Urim and Thummim, we really don't know what they were. The Torah is silent. Now, what's very interesting also is when we read, it does not say God said to Moses, make the Urim and Thummim. He said, when you have the breastpiece finished, go get, or that's the implication, go get the Urim and Thummim that you can put them in the pocket. In other words, they already existed. Moses knew what they were. And the Hebrews coming out of Egypt, they knew what they were. Clearly, they already existed. So the question is, what were they? We're going to take a look at Dr. John Curried's commentary again with regards to the possibilities of what this might be as we take a look into the historical and archaeological sources. So again, accessing Dr. Curried's commentary with regards to the Urim and Thummim, we read, the identification of Urim and Thummim is uncertain. They appear relatively few times in the Bible. Here they are. So I'm going to give you the list, and you can look these up for yourself. Leviticus chapter 8, verse 8. Numbers 27, verse 21. Deuteronomy 33, verse 8. 1 Samuel 28, verse 6. Ezra chapter 2, verse 63. And Nehemiah chapter 7, verse 65. Apparently, they were objects that served as one of the means of ascertaining God's will for his people. In all the texts, however, there is no description of the objects themselves, nor is the manner of their use explained. In addition, the etymology of the two terms is enigmatic. In other words, it's unknown, it's a mystery. So it's very interesting that both Jewish scholars and Christian scholars will talk about Urim and Thurim, and they'll say these words, we really don't know what these words mean. The rabbis said they made a guess because Urim is almost like the Hebrew word or for light. And if you take an I am, Urim, those seem to be connected. So Urim must be lights. The problem is, like I said, the gender of the actual noun light in Hebrew, which is actually feminine. So if you study 1 Samuel 14, 37 through 41, these verses may shed some much needed light on the nature of the Urim and Thummim. In this episode, Saul inquires of God whether or not he ought to attack the Philistines. God does not answer him. But later he pleads with God that he show Thamim or Thummim in verse 41. When the Septuagint translates this passage, it renders it, "Why have you not responded to your servant today? If this iniquity was due to my son Jonathan or to me, O Lord God of Israel, show Urim. And if you say it was due to your people Israel, show Thummim." If that is a proper understanding of the use of these objects, then Urim and Thummim were similar to lots that were cast to find out the future, such as we find mentioned several times in the Old Testament, like in Leviticus 16 verses 8 through 10, or Joshua 18 verses 6 through 10. Now here is really another awesome possibility. And again, Dr. John Currid shares some other thoughts of what rabbis thought about the Urim and Thummim. It has been suggested that the terms Urim and Thummim represent the first and last letters of the Hebrew alphabet, the Aleph and the Tav. If so, that may symbolize the sum of total knowledge in life. I find that really fascinating. To go in deeper into the study of the Urim and Thummim, what they were, and taking a look at the various possibilities, I suggest to you taking a look at the InterVarsity Press Bible Commentary of the Old Testament. I've linked that article to you in the comment section, or the article on or from the International Bible Study Encyclopedia on the Urim and Thummim. And you're going to find that as you take a look at these various sources, a number of ideas are repeated. Now, when you take a look at the Orthodox Jewish rabbis' commentary in the Chumash, for instance, you're going to find that their ideas are surrealistic. They are made up out of fantasy, and there's no support for their ideas whatsoever. So, for instance, one great rabbi, Maimonides, he talks about the fact that when you are inquiring of the Lord using Urim and Thummim, what it actually is the actual gems on the breastpiece light up, okay, like a Morse code, giving the person what the answer should be. Now, there's no support for this whatsoever, but you can see Maimonides is connecting Urim to the concept of lights. And with regards to basic grammar in Hebrew, this is totally incorrect. And so once again, when we take a look at the rabbi's view, there are things that there's just no historical support whatsoever. So we'll probably never know what the Urim and Thummim actually are. We'll probably finally get to know that when Jesus finally returns. It was clearly something the Hebrews understood. Moses got it. The Hebrews got it. But for us, it seems like the truth about what the Urim and Thummim actually are seems to be lost to us forever. So let's return to the verses here in Exodus chapter 28. And once again, reading from the New American Standard Bible, we're going to take a look at verses 31 through 38. You shall make the robe of the ephod all of blue. So this is the robe that the high priest wore. The priests do not wear a robe of blue, only the high priest. There shall be an opening at its top. In the middle of it, around its opening, there shall be a binding of woven work, like the opening of a coat of mail, so that it will not be torn. You shall make on its hem pomegranates of blue and purple and scarlet material, all around on its hem, and bells of gold between them all around. A golden bell and a pomegranate, a golden bell and a pomegranate, all around on the hem of the robe. It shall be on Aaron when he ministers, and its tinkling shall be heard when he enters and leaves the holy place before the Lord, so that he will not die. Now, one thing I want you to see, its tinkling will be heard when Aaron enters the holy place, not the Holy of Holies. We'll talk about that in just a second. So that he will not die. So in other words, if Aaron comes into the holy place and those bells aren't ringing, Aaron is going to be executed. You shall also make a plate of pure gold and shall engrave on it, like the engravings of a seal, holy to the Lord. You shall fasten it on a blue cord, and it shall be on the turban. It shall be at the front of the turban. It shall be on Aaron's forehead. And Aaron shall take away the iniquity of the holy things which the sons of Israel consecrate, with regard to all their holy gifts. And it shall always be on his forehead, that they may be accepted before the Lord. You shall weave the tunic of checkered work of fine linen, and shall make a turban of fine linen, and shall make a sash, the work of a weaver. For Aaron's sons you shall make tunics. You shall also make sashes for them, and you shall make caps for them for glory and for beauty. So I just want you to see Aaron's 8 specific pieces of the dress for a high priest are for glory and beauty. And also the tunic, the sash, and the cap for Aaron's sons, the priests, are for glory and beauty. You shall put them on Aaron, your brother, and on his sons with them, and you shall anoint them and ordain them and consecrate them, that they may serve me as priests. You shall make for them linen breeches to cover their bare flesh, basically linen underwear. And they shall reach from the loins even to the thighs. They shall be on Aaron and his sons when they enter the tent of meeting, and when they approach the altar to minister in the holy place, so that they do not incur guilt and die. It shall be a statute forever to him and to his descendants after him. So we read that Aaron is going to come into the holy place, and the Lord wants to hear the bells that are on the blue robe. If the Lord, and this is the holy place, this is not the Holy of Holies. The Holy of Holies is where the Ark of the Covenant is. This is just entering the holy place. This is just on a regular basis. And for the Lord, he wants to hear those bells. If those bells are not ringing, if he doesn't hear them as Aaron is going to minister to the Lord in the holy place, Aaron is going to die. So the bells also seem to be an indication for Aaron that before he is coming into the holy place, he's going to hear those bells. Does he have the proper clothing on? In other words, God said, here are the 8 specific pieces of Aaron's high priestly garments. Do you have them all on? So it's a warning for Aaron. And it's also an indication for the Lord that Aaron is obeying the Lord with regards to the specific detail that God is demanding in terms of the worship of the Lord. So in other words, on one hand, you have the Lord basically saying, I want to hear those bells. It's an indication to me that Aaron is saying, I'm obeying and I'm coming in as directed by the Lord. And it's a warning for Aaron. Does he have everything to perfection? Now later, we're going to see that Nadav and Abihu, the oldest son of Aaron and the second oldest, are executed by God because they don't follow God's specific instructions. And they're executed because they brought in incense that the Lord said did not meet the standards that he wanted. This is amazing. So we come to the end of Exodus 28. And what we see is God means what he says. This is how he wants his high priest to dress. This is how he wants the priests to dress. Already we've seen how he wants his tabernacle built. We're going to hear about Nadav and Abihu, who brought in the incorrect incense. They made their own decision. And one of the things that we have here, God is saying, no way can any priest determine how they want to worship the Lord. The Lord is setting that up. He means what he says. I find it interesting then to take it all the way to our Lord, Jesus, who is God, when he says, I am the way and the truth and the life. And again, he means what he says. Shalom.